start this party with a bang!
These videos are not for children. If you're a children, then piss off.
Hey there, it's me, your least favorite YouTuber, the Infuso. Back at it again with your least favorite opinion. I'm just gonna get right into it. I liked Two-Face in Batman Forever.
Blast him!
Whoa, hold on. Now hold on. Hold up. There is a little bit of an asterisk to that statement. You know, there's a bit more going on here than just that. I'm not just gonna leave it there and then continue on with my day. And because I'm gonna be addressing this thoroughly throughout this video, I'm just gonna ask that you bear with me here till the end. I'm gonna say a couple things that a couple people aren't gonna agree with, but I also may say a thing or two that you might find yourself surprisingly on board with. So let's hop aboard this sinking ship that is my channel, as we get back into one of my all-time favorite Batman movies, Batman Forever. I think it needs to be stated that Two-Face is my all-time favorite Batman character. He always has been, and he always will be. And I really like Batman Forever's Two-Face. But do I think it's a fair or accurate representation of one of my all-time favorite characters in fiction? No, not at all, not even close. Harvey Dent is a three-dimensional character who is of two minds. A man constantly in conflict with himself. A full-fledged character shaded gray in what feels to be a black and white world to him. A guy who struggled so much with his own demons that he became his own demons. Part-time. This is a character rich in substance and depth. And this? Well, this is not that. It seems that despite being dressed as Two-Face, Tommy Lee Jones thought that he was playing the Joker. The needless and incessant laughter, the campy over-the-top reactions, the ham-fisted acting, the chewing of scenery. No, this is not a great Harvey Dent, nor is it a great Two-Face. Well, for the most part. I will say there are certain scenes in the film that I think really get the character, and allow Tommy Lee Jones to shine through as this character. There's a couple moments and instances where I'm reminded of the source material. A couple lines of dialogue are really spot on. That first scene we get of Two-Face is Two-Face.
One man is born a hero, his brother a coward. Babies starve, politicians grow fat.
Yes, of course you're right, Bruce. Emotion's always the enemy of true justice. Thank you. You've always been a good friend.
Luck! Blind, stupid, simple, doodah, clueless luck!
That's the Harvey Dent that I know and love. That's the guy I wish I saw more of in this movie. And there are moments where I think he properly portrayed his mannerisms. But unfortunately for us, these scenes are far and few in between. Instead of getting a nuanced noir Batman character, we instead get a villain from the 1960s Batman show. Like seriously, this performance is what I imagine that character would be had he actually showed up in that series. I desperately wish we got to see more of this side of the performance. The calm, collected, casual, but confident villain who's ready to decide your fate at the flip of a coin. That's the Two-Face that I wanted to see. Granted, while there were missteps, they did do some things right with the character. For example, the use of the word we in place of I and me is accurate. I like that he refers to himself as two in the place of one. There are a couple slip-ups here and there where it seems like Two-Face for some reason forgot his pronouns, but props to him for remembering for the most part. Then there's the fact that he flips his coin to make all his decisions for him, no matter how passionately he feels about the scenario at hand. Well, once again, sans this one scene. I really like that when one specific side of him is speaking, his body would lean in with that half, almost to showcase which Harvey is talking, also leaving his other half temporarily useless. But once again, that's not something that's done continually. That's more like if they remembered it in the moment type thing. And I think that's the big problem with this rendition of the character. For everything good I can say about him, there's always that little asterisk there. They never got something 100% right about him. The things that they did get right were more like maybe 70 to 80% of the time if you're lucky. Even in certain parts of the character that they do well on, it never stays consistent. He even had slightly different voice patterns for the two sides of the character. So this wasn't a completely out-of-pocket premise for this character. Sadly, the things that they got right kind of put more of an emphasis on the things that they got wrong. ultimately I have very similar feelings about Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face as I do about Jack Nicholson as the Joker in the first Batman film in this lineup. It's the right actor for the right character, but the wrong choices were made. I think both these actors had an incredible amount of potential in their respective roles, and at times they met that potential, but they didn't really fully acquaint themselves with. It's such a dip-your-toe performance, you know? Like, sometimes it feels like they're leaning into the character, and you're like, yes, this is what I wanted all along, but other times it seems like they're leaning back and kind of stepping away from the adaptation that I'd like to see. That could just be on me, considering a lot of people seem to really love Jack Nicholson as the Joker, but upon rewatch, I found myself a little disappointed. Not by his performance, it's not like Jack was bad. I just think that Jack Nicholson is capable of doing a lot better. Both actors could have done better, but ultimately they just don't meet the expectation head on. Whether that be a flaw in the directorial vision, or the actors themselves deciding to go a different direction, it doesn't matter because the result is the same. It creates something that's good, but not as good as it could have been. I still to this day think that Tommy Lee Jones would make a great Two-Face. I just think that he didn't make a great Two-Face. That statement does sound a little bit confusing, but it's not without merit. The best example I can think to use to get this point across is Brandon Routh. Brandon Routh was cast as Superman in Superman Returns, a role he got solely for his passing resemblance to Superman actor Christopher Reeve. By the way, I've been told forever that they look exactly alike, and I don't see it, at all. So I don't know what anybody's talking about. Brandon Routh was cast not only as Superman, but Christopher Reeve's Superman, in a late-in-life sequel to the first two Superman films. He was tasked with being the second coming of Reeve and was made yesterday's Man of Tomorrow. He was asked to recreate the magic of his predecessor and told to simply mimic what came before him. Most people didn't really take kindly to this ruse and saw straight through it. This wasn't Christopher Reeve, this was some cheap imitation, and yet he was brought back to the role years later, yet again, in the Arrowverse. Except this time around, his rendition of this role was widely praised, and understandably so. He was actually pretty great, and I now list him as one of my favorite Supermen of all time. So just because somebody didn't do great, doesn't mean that they're incapable of greatness. It just means in that moment, for one reason or another, didn't meet expectations. And that's why I think Tommy Lee Jones would have been a damn near perfect choice for this character had they went a different route and put effort into making him more like the actual character. But unfortunately, more often than not, we got Tommy Lee Jones becoming the second coming of Cesar Romero, which, by the way, he's surprisingly actually really good at. While this definitely isn't a great Two-Face performance, I don't think it's an overall bad performance. Yes, it's goofy and over the top, but I think for the atmosphere of this movie, which effortlessly juggled the darker elements of the previous two installments with the cartoonish nature the following installment would bring, in this kind of environment, I think this character really works as its own thing. Let me tell you, my whole life I've seen Tommy Lee Jones basically act like a live-action Droopy the dog. Barely ever a smile on his face, no excitement in his performance, just looking like he sucked on a whole bag of Sour Heads. But here, that's not the case. In Batman Forever, he's energetic, he's over the top, he's all over the place. It almost makes you wonder why they even thought to cast him. I really enjoy watching him for this very fact. It's so far outside of his wheelhouse that I would have never thought the man had it in his arsenal. Yet in Batman Forever, I think he kinda excels at this level of lunacy. He may not be a comic-accurate Two-Face, but I do think he did his job as a maniacal madman. Quite frankly, his time in the role really just feels like a PG version of his time on Natural Born Killers. This character is just straight up Warden McCluskey for kids. I think that may also play into why I like his performance here so much, because I also enjoyed his work in that other movie. The 2 times in my whole life I've ever seen Tommy Lee Jones smile, and that is probably 2 more times than anybody else in his personal life has ever seen. I don't know, it's just kind of nice to see the guy act like he actually has a soul, and isn't just Garfield reincarnated as a man. Now, I've read a lot of different reasons that were given for this particular performance, some of which claim Tommy Lee Jones was foolishly trying to emulate Jack Nicholson's Joker, which I don't think holds that much weight because Nicholson's Joker was a lot more subdued than this guy in comparison. But the other alleged reason is that Tommy Lee Jones felt he was in competition with his co-star and in-movie cohort, Jim Carrey. And throughout the whole movie, he was just trying to keep up with him, which all due respect to everybody involved, but that's a pretty meaningless effort. You're not gonna out Pizza the Hut, you know what I mean? Regardless, whatever his reasoning was for this lazy town villain that he created, I actually like it. Once again, as a Two-Face performance, no, it's not on the mark, it misses it by a mile, but as its own unique, bizarre baddie, yeah, this is actually kind of fun. I'm sorry, I don't understand why this guy gets so much hate in this role. But most of all, more importantly than anything I said previously, more than the actual performance, I love the look of this character. I think without a shadow of a doubt, I think this is not one of, but the greatest interpretation of Two-Face, aesthetically speaking. From the makeup that was used to pull this effect off, down to the suits that he wears, this is my all-time favorite Two-Face. Once again, in terms of appearance. The left side of Harvey's face is a complete car crash, in the sense that you don't want to look at it, but you really can't look away after catching a glimpse of it. The pinkish-purple acid burns, the crusted black lips, the strange twisted veins going down his face, it's also glorifyingly grotesque. He's hideous in the most beautiful ways. That vaguely fleshy look looks straight out of a horror movie. And the fact that this was included in a movie that was decidedly made for a younger audience, as they deemed that the last movie was way too dark for kids, is mind-boggling. There are still some things missing from this design that I'm far too familiar with in other Two-Face designs. But what it lacks in missing skin textures, it makes up for with other interesting replacements. Sure, he still has his lips, but they're crusted over. His eyelid is still intact, but now he's kind of missing an ear. Typically, the character has more of a green or a blue look in most depictions. But honestly, I kind of think this was the right call. I think this color suits the character a lot better. Kind of makes it look like half his face is just completely scabbed over following the accident. You know, he doesn't look good, but it's a good look. I don't know if he's going to get a lot of matches on his Tinder profile, but he has my approval nonetheless. And attire-wise, my man had style. The perfectly symmetrical suits, the constant clash of styles to reflect the clash in personalities, I love it! It's so simplistic, but yet it's completely effective. What better way to visually express the character's split personality than by having him physically split right down the middle? If a mullet was a person, it would be this Two-Face. Business on the side, party on the other side. Even without the context of what this look represents, I think it's just kind of cool to look at. If you didn't want to look that deep into it, just observing it for what it is, I think it's worth something. It's a look that demands attention on a character that deserves more attention. I really hate to compare and contrast here because I know a lot of people are going to be upset that I do, but I'm almost forced to, given that we don't have a whole lot of live-action Two-Faces to talk about. Let me say it now. Aaron Eckhart is a phenomenal actor, but he was kind of boring and bland in The Dark Knight. Like, he looked like a Ken doll that ran for office. He had a very generic look to him. And when he made his half-hearted turn to the dark side, this very generic-looking guy became a very generic-looking villain. I'm sorry, but that look isn't for me. I never really liked it. I know that I'm gonna get hate for it, but... This, though, for better or worse, is something much more memorable. I don't know about you, but I certainly wouldn't forget a guy with half of a pink zebra print suit who also has half his face looking like Ivan Ooze. That basic suited skeleton man? I don't know, not really doing it for me. When I say I'm a fan of this version of the character, I mean it. I've gone so far out of my way to try and collect every piece of Batman Forever Two-Face memorabilia that I could possibly get my hands on. And my collection is still growing. Like, no joke, there are editions currently on the way. This is how much this campy antagonist has meant to me over the years. I took this performance into my adulthood. Last Halloween, I even dressed up as the dude. And yeah, you may say that was just done so I could have some lame excuse to buy the costume I always wanted since I was a child. To which I say, shut up. Ultimately, this isn't my favorite Two-Face, but it is my favorite look for Two-Face. And while it isn't the greatest Two-Face performance, it is a fun, if not somewhat goofy one nonetheless. It isn't ideal, but I think it gets far too much hate than it actually deserves. So here's to giving it a little bit of praise. So if you like this video and want to see more Batman content, leave me a comment saying,
Have the good taste to die! See ya!
And with all that being said, I was your least favorite YouTuber, the Infuso, and I thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one. Oh, and before you go, I wanted to ask, have you ever loved one of my videos but couldn't find it because the copyright overlords have struck it down and smited me? Have you ever wanted to watch some of my many deleted videos again? Have you ever wanted me to review something specific? Like, we're talking a whole ass review at your own request. Have you ever wanted early access to my content weeks or even at times months before it comes out on the channel? Well, if the answer to all above is yes, you're in luck. All of these things are a possibility with the relaunch of my Patreon, so feel free to check it out and sign up for all the rewards I mentioned and all the ones I didn't. Link in the description below.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was V Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.